Good evening, folks, and welcome to this week's episode of Beer Rating with Sean Connors. As you can see, the beer I have this week is 10 Penny Stock Ale Heritage Series. I'll just give my glass a quick cold water rinse, as always. We'll pour it up, and then we'll talk a little bit about it. This beer is actually from Moosehead Breweries, which is a maritime brewery out of St. John, Nova Scotia. We'll talk a little bit about the brewery itself in a second. And I'll just read the back of the can. It says Moosehead, established 1867, 10 penny stock ale, 5.2% alcohol, 25 IBU, has to do with the color. And then they got a little story there. It says, every brew has a story. First brewed in 1934, our 10 penny stock ale is one of our classics. We're proud to welcome back this light, well-balanced amber ale and this modest hop flavor as part of our Heritage Series. So there you go. So basically, it's from Moosehead Breweries, as I said, out of St. John, New Brunswick. 5.2% alcohol. They first brewed it in 1934, and then it was pretty well just archived. And now they do this series, or what they call their Heritage Series, and basically it's small batches of archive breweries, so they bring them back. They got a way I understand, I could be wrong, way I understand, they have like almost like a little mini brewery, and they use that for innovative and unique brews, what they say. And as I read from the can, it's an amber ale. They say it's light, well balanced, modestly hopped. And the name 10 penny actually comes from, back in Old England, the price of a beer had to do with the quality and the level of alcohol. So a 1 penny beer would basically get you a cheap beer, whereby a 10 penny beer would actually get you a good quality beer. And it's pretty funny because I actually bought this by accident. Here in Newfoundland, we have a new craft brewery opened up. It's called 9 Penny. So I dropped by there, and I wanted to get a couple of their beers to try. And I actually got there, they were closed around their soft opening hours, so they were closed. So I went to go to the liquor store, pick up a couple of beers. And I actually seen this, and I wasn't paying attention. I seen penny, and I just assumed it was. So I picked it up, got home, realized, no, I got 10 penny, not 9 penny. So there you go. But I'm happy to try it. I've never had it. So there you go. It's an amber ale. You can tell from the color. Nice little head on it. Not overly head, but not bad. No strong flavors. Or sorry, strong aroma. Not bad. Gotta try it again. A little bit of flavor to it. It's not overly heavy, overly strong, but it's there. Alright, a little bit about the brewery. As I said, it's Moosehead Brewery out in St. John, New Brunswick. They started in 1867, which is also when Canada started as a nation. They actually started, they say, on the Dartmouth shore of the Halifax Harbour. So it started in Halifax, Dartmouth area, and then eventually moved to New Brunswick, where they are now. They say it's one of the only large independent breweries in Canada, owned by the Olin family. And it was first started by Susanna Olin on the family farm on Dartmouth shore of Halifax Harbour. Throughout the years, before they came to the name Moosehead, if you've ever been in the Maritimes or spent any time in the Maritimes, you've heard of Moosehead beer. But they've actually, when they started off, I think it was John Olson and Son, and then they went to Army Navy Brewery. At one point, they were Halifax Brewery, and several other names. Either that brewery or the family itself were involved with breweries, and eventually they got to where they are today with Moosehead. So 1867, they've been around for over 150 years. So it's quite you think about, especially around the Halifax area. I mean, my understanding, they were there for the Halifax explosion. They survived that. Survived several fires over the years. Great Depression, Prohibition, you name it, they've survived. So they've pretty strong roots in the Maritimes. It's I was actually expecting it, like normally with ales you get quite a bit of flavor, not overly, but I was, for whatever reason, I was expecting a little bit more flavor to it, which isn't a bad thing, don't get me wrong. It's kind of like a, for me I could be wrong, but I find ales are a lot more flavorful than lagers. Lagers are more crisp, refreshing type thing, and this is almost somewhere in between, so it's not a bad thing. It seems like lately I've been leaning a little bit more towards lagers than I have ales. For me, I find ales are, sit back, relax, have one or two beers. But if I'm watching a hockey game or, out with friends, whatever the case might be, lagers are a little bit easier to have a few, I find. So there you go. So as I said, it's a stock ale, so you might be saying, okay, exactly what is a stock ale? I did a little bit of research, and basically they say stock ales is basically one of three traditional British ales, or British strong fruity ales. The other being old ales, which I haven't had yet, and also a barley wine, which is a type of ale. So I've never had either one of those, so hopefully eventually I can find one. I really want to try a barley wine. The stock ale itself was first mentioned late 1700s, so it's been around for quite a while. However, the definition of a stock ale has never really been defined. And it's funny because on the website, somewhere I came across, they actually call this old stock ale. So that kind of threw me for a loop, but on the can they say stock ale. So I'm going with that. Now, generally stock ales are normally about 7.5 or at least 7.5% alcohol. As I said, this one is like 5.2, so it's a little bit lower than traditional ales. Some stock ales have gone up as far as 9%. And because of that, the higher alcohol, they are known that they were able to be stocked, and that's how the name came about. So basically, the higher alcohol acted as a preservative where it would last a little longer, as opposed to what they used to call running beers, or basically beers that once they were brewed, you had a really short time frame to drink them before they start going bad. You're talking about back in the day, there was no refrigeration or anything like that. And also back in the day in Old England, the stock ale was also what they call part of a three-thread brew. And what that is, basically, you go in the tavern, you'd order an ale, and the inn owner or tavern owner would actually blend three different types of ales. And quite often they would actually use stock ales. And but they said the stock would actually give it a little bit more complexity to the blend. And also, if there was any older ales that they wanted to get rid of, that was their chance to get rid of it. And stock ales, they say it's normally brewed in casks anywhere from a couple of months to up to a year. So, they're normally aged for a little bit of time anyways. And they said that normally makes it a little bit more mellow, more easier to drink, palatable. And also, it gave it a musty-like taste or aroma, which actually back then, that's what it was a good thing, which some people may think musty, it's a bad thing, but there you go. And they say normally stock ales are a little bit more hop than old ales. And finally, they used to say that the stock ale would be used with the first runnings. And what that is, you got your mash, which basically we talked about it in another episode where you got your barley, you soak it in water, you run the water through it. Well, basically that gives you your starting point for your brew, and then you continue on with other steps. But a lot of times what they would do, they would actually use that mash to make two or three, maybe even four, normally two or three different types of beers. And normally the first running would be your best beer, and then with the higher alcohol content, and your second running not as good, maybe a little bit lower alcohol, and so on and so on. So normally with stock ale, it was always the first running. So there you go, folks. Time to give it a rating. Moosehead, small batch, 10-penny stock ale. As always, my ratings are out of 5. A 1 being can't finish it. A 2, it's a beer I'll finish. 3 is a good beer. 4 is very good beer. A 5 is the best beer I've ever had. So this one, I'm leaning towards either a 3 or a 3.5. I think I'm comfortable giving it a 3. 3.0. A strong 3.0. As I said, I was debating giving it a 3.5, but I'm comfortable giving it a 3.0. So there you go, folks. Moosehead small batch 10-penny stock ale, 3.0 out of 5. Thanks, folks. Until next beer, remember, enjoy responsibly. Cheers.